In a previous video, I mentioned that I see similarities between how Donald Trump's election campaign was being run and how election campaigns have been run in Latin America the last few years. For instance, Venezuela, Colombia, Honduras, Mexico. The thing they have in common is not that they are left or right. The thing they have in common is the people behind the election campaigns. And let me mention one thing to open your eyes, so to say. When Zelaya was thrown out from Honduras and Micheletti was interim president, there were a bunch of murders of reporters. And of course the Zelaya backers, the Zelaya supporters, Zelayistas, accused the regime of murdering them. But when somebody independent investigated, it turned out that about 1/3 of those murdered had supported Zelaya, and 1/3 had supported Micheletti, and 1/3 had never expressed an opinion in politics. But all of them had one thing in common. They had all written about organized crime, drug trafficking. That is the common denominator in all of this in Latin America. And there is a guy in Colombia sitting in jail right now who was involved in this kind of election campaigning, where they hack into opponents' computers and use social media to spread false stories for defamation. Exactly the thing that was done in the Trump campaign. After Zelaya was thrown out from Honduras, Porfirio Lobo, Pepe Lobo, was elected president. And after him, the one who had been his right hand, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who then was re-elected. His election and re-election was every bit as legitimate as Donald Trump's election here. Take that as you want. Pepe Lobo's son is sitting in jail for life in the US for drug trafficking. He was a candidate from the right party, conservative party. In Venezuela, there is a communist regime under Nicolás Maduro, who is married to Cilia Flores. They have two nephews who are presently have been convicted for drug trafficking and will probably get life in jail in the United States. What do they have? What interest do they have in the US presidency? Well, they have family members who are serving lifetime in jail, and the only way to get them out, the one and only way to get them out, is a presidential pardon. Think about that. So I don't know how much Russia really needs it. It helps Russia, but does it really need it? I don't know. But the people who are really have no other way out than to have their man, whom they have by the balls, in the White House, is the ex-president of Honduras, whose second-hand, right-hand man is now the president, and the president of Venezuela. And these people are allied with Castro, for instance, with the FARC guerrilla, those who just signed the peace treaty in Colombia. They are like this with Maduro, and they have been backed up by Castro. And we know that Castro had, for a long time, when Fidel Castro and Raúl Castro took the power in Cuba, the first foreign goal they looked at was to take control of Latin America, and Venezuela was the bridgehead. Castro has tried with 5 different methods to take control over Venezuela. First, they did a military invasion, which failed. And because of that, Cuba was expelled from the Organization of American States. If you listen to Cuban propaganda, they say that they were expelled because the US had an embargo on Cuba. False. They were expelled because they did a military attack on Venezuela. When that failed, they supported the leftist guerrilla. When that failed, they organized the Caracazo uprising in 1989. And by that time, Hugo Chavez, Fidel's man, was already infiltrated in the presidential palace in Caracas, Venezuela. So that failed. And then in 1992, Hugo Chavez did first one and then another military coup attempt, which failed. That was method number 4. The 5th and final attempt to take power in Venezuela was to have Hugo Chavez run for president in 1989. He won, and in 1999 he was installed as president in Venezuela. And the first thing he did was to take over all the institutions of government and do away, well, under the guise of improving democracy, he did away with democracy. And since then, Venezuela has been a dictatorship. Every election since, they've held many elections, every election since has been fraudulent, and they've stolen it. Except once, in 2007, they couldn't steal it because they had added so many votes that there were more votes than voters. And then they had to stop counting and say, you won. And also the last one, in 6th of December 2015, the parliamentary elections, they were going to steal it, but the military, a number of patriotic officers, said to the regime, if you steal this election, there will be a rebellion in the military. So they had to give an absolute majority to the opposition, which, by the way, since then have done nothing to overthrow Maduro. They promised to do it before the end of the year. Look where we are. Nothing has happened. Because in an electoral dictatorship, the opposition gains more from collaborating with the regime than from overthrowing the regime. That has been proven, empirically and theoretically. So the time to stop an erosion of democracy is initially. You have to predecir el final y prevenir el inicio. You have to foresee the end and prevent the beginning. You have to prevent Trump from taking office, period. There is no second chance after that.